If your business relies entirely on you, it's not scalable. You may hire a VA or two, but if you are still in the middle of everything, you will eventually hit a wall. I've been there myself. Before we got our brand to 8 figures, we were trying to figure this stuff out for nearly 2 years. And let me tell you that the only way to make your business scalable is to systemize it. But let's make this clear. Systemizing is not about creating procedures. In this video, I'm going to show you how to systemize your business the right way. And this is not something that comes from books. It comes from 8 years of experience in the Amazon space and working with over 100 brands. So let's dive in. So the first step is to understand what even systemizing is. And I think that there is no better way to explain this than following this simple thought experiment. So let me explain. Let's imagine a kitchen for a moment. A very chaotic kitchen where all the items are stored randomly, all the tools are far from where you need them, so you waste a lot of time searching for stuff and moving around. And now imagine a kitchen that is very well organized. The tools are placed where you use them, right? The knives are next to the cutting boards and the spices are next to the stove. Everything is labeled. Your favorite recipes are here pinned on the fridge, and everything flows logically and efficiently. And now, if I would ask you a few questions like, where would you feel more comfortable to prepare a big meal under pressure, right? Usually you prepare a meal for 2 people, but this time you have 10 or 20 people coming over. This would represent the seasonal spikes in business, right? The increased volume. So where would you feel more comfortable? Would it be the chaotic or the organized one? What about trying a new recipe, something you've never done before? You don't know what to expect. Again, where would you feel more confident? This would represent experimenting in business, right? Trying something new, something you've never done before. And what about identifying when something is wrong? Of course, in the organized kitchen, it's very straightforward to see if something is wrong. But in the chaotic one, it's easy to overlook the things that are going wrong. Again, in business, these would be our performance indicators to even understand that something is not performing well. But most importantly, imagine bringing in someone new, someone who's never been to your kitchen and asking them to prepare a meal for you. Where do you think it would be easier? In the chaotic kitchen where only you know how stuff works and where stuff is? Or the organized kitchen where everything is labeled and your recipes are on the fridge and everything kind of makes sense and logic? So this is a simple example to really understand the difference between a business that is not systemized, that is very chaotic, which is most businesses, compared to a business that is well structured, well organized. So when we are going to talk about systemizing, we can say that systemizing is organizing the business. So it's easier to navigate, it's easier to do things, it's easier to bring people on board and ask them to help us. It's easier to spot when something goes wrong. And of course, it's easier to experiment and try new things, whether it's launching products, expanding to new marketplaces, sales channels. It just makes running a business easier. Now, when we talk about systemizing a business, the first step we need to take is to take a step back. Because more often than not, we are operating in the business, right? Working in the business day to day in the middle of everything, which makes it quite hard to see how things even work and where to even begin with the systemization. So the first step is to take a step back and see the business as a separate entity, right? You are not your business. Now we take a step back away from your business and see it for what it is. The best way to see this is that the business is a machine, right? So we stepped out, now we are the observer, and we see likely a lot of chaos. So it's even hard to understand what are we seeing at this moment and how the business even works, because if we remove ourselves, nothing probably makes sense at this point. So now we can actually start systemizing the business and turning it into an efficient machine. Now, let me show you a simple framework that will help us systemize our business. So every time we take a closer look at a specific part of the machine, that is a specific workflow or a specific process in the business, we need to be able to answer these questions in order to systemize it. So the first question is to understand why. Why is this part there? Why does it matter for your business, right? Why do we even do this? What is the objective? Then we need to clarify what, to be clear about what needs to be done to get the result you want, right? Then we also need to clarify when it needs to be done, right? When should it happen? What does it trigger, right? What triggers this task, and what is the overall flow of the tasks, so we know when to actually follow this process. Then we need to write down the steps to do the task the right way. This would be the how. And lastly, who? Choose the person who will do the task. Of course, it might be you. In many cases, if it's just a sole entrepreneur, having 1 or 2 employees, in most cases it will actually be you. But it's necessary to clarify the accountability. So being able to answer these high-level questions about every process in the business, right? Again, returning back to seeing the business as a machine, so that would be each part of the machine. Why is it there? What does it do? When it should happen? How it happens? And who is accountable for it? But of course, when we want to actually systemize the business and follow the steps to put it into practice, because this is still high level, but I want to give you more guidance. So let's take a look at it and follow a specific step-by-step roadmap to systemize the business. We will have 7 steps in our roadmap. Now, I'm going to follow a simple workflow that everyone is familiar with, right? We all do this: shipments. Moving units from our supplier to our target marketplace, either to Amazon warehouse or to our 3PL. Now, as we said, the first step is to clarify why, understand the reason. So why we even do this, right? Clarify is the first step in our framework, where we want to clarify the objective of this particular process. So let's say the objective of the supply system is to get the products to Amazon. But shipments specifically, the objective needs to be more specific, right? We have a lot of requirements here. So it could look like this: ensure each shipment is delivered on time, in good condition, at reasonable cost, meeting all compliance requirements. And as you can see, even defining the objective specifically then makes it easier, because now we are already thinking what we are actually trying to achieve. It's not just to move the units from place A to place B, but we need to do it on time, in a good condition, right? We don't want our units to break. Reasonable cost, of course, important component, and all compliance requirements, right? Customs and all of that stuff. So here, the objective is clear, very specific. We know what purpose this process serves. So we finish the first step to clarify the objective. Now, in our higher level framework, we also said that we want to clarify what needs to be done and when. So after clarifying, we need to define the process, map out the high-level workflow using a simple flowchart. And this is where we draft the high-level process map, right? This is important because that builds the foundation for what comes next. We need to understand what happens first, what is the workflow, what are the decision points. So now I will hop to Miro, which is the software I use to create process maps. So we said we are going to create a flowchart for the process of shipments. We also said we need to clarify what triggers this particular process, right? So when do we generally create shipments? Well, we create shipments when we place purchase orders, when we order units. Now we have the goods, so we can ship it from our supplier to our target marketplace. We can take it even step back and think, what triggers purchase orders? When do we even place new purchase orders? And that would be inventory forecasting, right? When we forecast that we need to order more units, that we are going to run out of stock, and how many units to order. And this would be a routine. So some processes are triggered by another process, and some processes are triggered as a routine, either weekly, monthly, whatever it is triggered on a regular basis. Now, we are going to take a closer look at shipments, right? So if I would go ahead and create a proper flowchart, I put these in my supply system. So these are the triggers. We are not going to focus on those for now. We are going to focus on our shipments. When I create a flowchart, I like to separate the actual process into phases, right? That will help me to wrap my mind around all of the tasks and all of the steps and all the decisions that need to happen. So generally, every single process you have, you can separate it into, let's say, 3-4 phases that will make this process much easier. So in this case, I prepared these 3 phases. Phase 1 is the preparation, right? This is where we prepare the shipping plans. Phase 2 is when we actually ship the goods, when our supplier hands over the goods to our freight forwarder. So now the goods are moving. And lastly, phase 3 would be the delivery. But of course, this is not finished, right? This doesn't really tell us much. So let's take a closer look at phase 1. So at phase 1, we talked about preparing the shipments, right? So we likely have to create our shipping plans, how many units, which container size, all of that stuff, prepare the shipping plans. Then freight quotes, to get quotes from our freight forwarders. Then book the shipment, right? If we are happy with the quote, we will continue. If we are not happy, we will likely go back to recreating the shipping plans. Maybe we will decide to ship more units so we can order a larger container and pay less per cube, right? This is important to have a decision point, because if we are not happy with the quotes, maybe we can request more quotes from more forwarders, but it's important to have this decision point before we even book the shipments. If we are happy, we will book the shipments and then provide instructions to our supplier. This is something what the phase 1 could look like. Now we will go further. And phase 2, when we actually ship the goods, right, we have some preparation period, right? So we prepared the shipping plans, booked everything, sent labeling instructions, all of that fun stuff. And now we have the prep period. During the shipping phase, we likely will have to provide all of the shipping docs, the CIPL, and monitor the shipment progress. This is pretty straightforward. And when it comes to phase 3, the delivery, of course, we have again some transit period. And then we have a task to arrange final delivery, whether it's to Amazon, to 3PL, right? Update all of our internal tracking tools. Again, another decision point to make sure that the goods are delivered fine. Maybe they got stuck somewhere, right? Maybe they were damaged. In that case, if there are some discrepancies, we want to investigate and solve this issue. And if everything is okay, we can pay the freight and duty and we are done, right? Very straightforward. We don't overthink it. We don't write every single step, right? This is the high level view. So we just understand the key phases, the key steps that need to happen, the key decisions. Don't write every single step, right? If we would have all of the steps that actually need to happen, it would be useless, right? We would have so many things here. It would be too overwhelming and no one would ever use this. But this, very straightforward, very high level. And now we can continue with the next step. The third step is to streamline the process, right? Leverage all of the tools and automation and software to remove potential inefficiencies. So let's hop back and identify where we could streamline our tasks. So now we are at step 3 to streamline, and we have our flowchart right here. And streamlining is about making our job easier, right? Spending less time to do the same work, creating leverage in business. So for creating shipping plans, we can have a custom spreadsheet that will do all of the math for us. So if I say in my spreadsheet that I want to ship 1,000 units of product A, 600 units of product B, it will do the math for me to tell me which size of the container to order, how many cartons, how many labels. It will do all of the math for me. So the only thing I have to do is to just fill in the numbers, right? That will save me a lot of time. So I definitely want some custom tool right here, whether it's a software or spreadsheet. I prefer spreadsheets, so I would create a spreadsheet. Now, requesting quotes. I likely send a request to multiple freight forwarders. So in this case, I can actually create an automation. You can use Zapier or any other tool that allows you to create the automation. So once I finish my shipping plan in the spreadsheet, I can have a button, press the button, and now the shipping plan is sent to 3-4 freight forwarders. And now I'm waiting for their quotes, right? So basically I reduce the time spent on this task to 0, right? Because it's done automatically. Then I book the shipment. Let's say for preparing and sending instructions, I can have an email template, right? For the labeling instructions, I can have a document for the supplier to label all of the goods. Again, having some template in place will save me a lot of time because I do the same thing over and over again. Here, I probably cannot simplify it even more than that. When arranging final delivery to 3PL or Amazon, again, I can have these templates prepared. Our internal tracking tool to analyze transit times, cost per cube, when shipping, very important to keep track of that. So I want some tool, so I don't have to do that manually for every single shipment. I want some tool that calculates the averages for me. And that would be it for streamlining this. Again, we can then return back to it and identify the bottlenecks where we can leverage more automations, better software. But in general, I want to take a high level look to see where I'm likely going to spend the most time, creating shipping plans, preparing instructions, and how can I make it easier. Often the solution will either be some automation, custom tools as a spreadsheet, or some software solution. Step number 4 is measure, to determine which metrics to track for these key tasks, right? And this is important, extremely important for you as the manager when you then hand this over to someone else. People often ask, what kind of KPIs should I set? Well, this is how to know which KPIs to set for each process. So let's go back to our flowchart. We have step number 4 and our flowchart right here. So in this phase 1, important metric to track is the cost per cube, right? How much are we paying per cube? Because this is a major component of our cost of goods. So we want to keep a close eye on this, right? Likely, when we want to eventually optimize this cost, one of the ways we can do this is to request quotes from more forwarders, right? And let them compete with each other to provide better pricing to us. So important metric to track, to measure, is the cost per CBM. Another one would be, as we already said, the transit times, right? Because it's not just about price, it's also about the predictability of transit times, not necessarily about the shortest transit times. It's fine if they are a bit longer, but we account for them in our forecasting. But if they are too volatile, our forecasting won't be as accurate. So we don't want to ship necessarily with freight forwarders that cannot really predict their shipping times, right? So transit times, important metric to track. Also percentage of damaged goods, right? If you ship something fragile, with some, maybe if you see that the percentage of damaged goods, is high, you may reconsider changing the packaging and all of that stuff. So again, these metrics are there for us to then gain insights and make better decisions. And what I also like to track is hours worked per shipment. In general, I track hours worked in every process. That helps me optimize, that helps me plan labor for the team, whether we need to hire someone else or whether it's fine to have one person managing this. So overall, the time commitment required here, right? And also we talked about streamlining, which should then directly affect the hours spent per shipment, right? If you imagine that you spend 10 hours per shipment and you implement some automations and tools to save time, well, then you better make sure that you actually save time and you no longer spend 10 hours per shipment, right? So this would be the high level view for high level metric for each process. Now we are getting into the how, to write down the steps to do the task the right way. And we call this step number 5, to document, creating clear step-by-step instructions for key tasks. And I want to make this very, very clear. I don't want you to create SOPs for every single task. No, SOPs are here to teach our team, to train them in tasks they are not as comfortable with, right? So I would create in Notion, in my software for company wiki, I highly recommend it, to create a database for process called shipments, which we are working on right now, and potentially create detailed instructions where we need to. If you are running the process and you're accountable for the process on your own and you know how to do everything, do not create SOPs. That's a waste of time. If you then hire someone, you guide them through the process and you see that they're struggling with the specific steps, create SOPs for those steps. So in this case, let's say we want to create an SOP, how to create shipping plans, right? That was the first step, first key task in our flowchart. Potentially how to prepare and send shipping instructions, how to generate labels, right? But we create these only when we see the need, right? So we don't spend time creating hundreds of SOPs that no one will ever open, right? So here, very specific. When we see the need, we create an SOP, likely with AI. We use, record a video, instructions, and send it to the employee. They learn how to do it, and that's it. Now, then we are going into the who, choosing the person who will be accountable for the task. And we call this step number 6, delegate. Assign task to your team and set clear accountability, right? It's your team or you. And for this, we will use a task management. I highly recommend using Asana, where we can create templates and checklists of what needs to be done, right? Now we want the specifics, right? We created a high-level overview with the key task, but now we're actually writing down the checklist, what needs to happen with every single shipment. And this will likely change, every now and then you will remove a subtask, you will add another one, so this is evolving, but what matters is that we still have the stages, right? We talked about the phases, pre-shipment, shipping. This really reflects the structure we created in the flowchart, which likely doesn't change as much because we kept it high level. But here we have the specific steps where we also define the accountability, right? So if I would have a supply manager, let's say, I would hand this over to them. So every single shipment, I can monitor how they are making progress and the task they are ticking off, because every single shipment, we need to get the quotes, quote comparison sheet, review and quotes and book the shipment. All of that stuff needs to happen for every single shipment. So I better have that as a template. So we talked about this process maps, right? This is where we begin. We have the task management in Asana, company wiki in Notion, and all of this works in a nice synergy, right? Because everything is kind of built around this idea that we want to streamline the business as much as possible and systemize everything. So we have the process maps as the foundation. That's the high level view. Company wiki where we have the instructions, all of the know-how, and task management when we have the real tasks and accountability where we basically spend most of our time working once the business is systemized. And lastly, a little cherry on top, step number 7 is to get better and better, is to optimize, like continuously improve your system based on feedback and performance. Once you have a team, this will be your main job to identify bottlenecks and make improvements. We define these metrics in step number 4, which are the KPIs, right? The performance indicators. And if we see that something is not doing well, right? Some process is not performing, we zoom in, we optimize, we maybe think about using some different tools to make it better or figure out ways how to overall fix the issue. But at the end of the day, when you have the team, your main job is to have a dashboard of these key metrics you identified and having the finger on the pulse of the business like this while your team is running the show. So to recap, the first step is to clarify the objective, define the high-level workflows, streamline as much as possible, identify what needs to be measured, document where needed, delegate, and lastly, optimize on an ongoing basis. If you want my help to guide you through this transformation one-on-one to systemize your business and build the right team, make sure to check out the link in the description. In our next video, we are going to talk about what your team should look like, who to hire and when. So go ahead and watch it now. I'll see you there. Bye.